कभी सोचा है कि जीवन की जो बड़ी बड़ी घटनाएं हैं वो अक्सर एक साथ ही क्यों होती हैं? जैसे जब अच्छा समय आता है तो सब कुछ एक साथ अच्छा होने लगता है। आज हम वैदिक ज्योतिष के प्राचीन सिद्धांतों के जरिए इस रहस्यमय पैटर्न को समझने की कोशिश करेंगे।
कभी ऐसा महसूस हुआ है कि जिंदगी के सारे बड़े मोड़, चाहे वो अच्छे हों या बुरे, एकदम से एक साथ आ जाते हैं? ये लगभग हर किसी का अनुभव है। और आज हम इसी दिलचस्प सवाल के पीछे छिपे ब्रह्मांडीय तर्क को खोलेंगे।
जरा सोचिए, एक ही साल में नौकरी में तरक्की हो गई, शादी भी हो गई और शायद एक नया घर भी मिल गया। ऐसा लगता है ना जैसे किस्मत के सारे दरवाजे एक साथ खुल गए हों। लेकिन इसके पीछे वजह क्या हो सकती है? क्या यह सिर्फ एक इत्तेफाक है या कोई गहरा पैटर्न काम कर रहा है?
तो चलिए इस रहस्य की परतें खोलते हैं। वैदिक ज्योतिष के हिसाब से घटनाओं का ये गुच्छा कोई संयोग नहीं है, बल्कि ये नियति की 4 परतों वाले एक सिस्टम का नतीजा है जो एक साथ मिलकर काम करते हैं।
सबसे पहली और सबसे जरूरी परत है दशा। इसे ऐसे समझिए जैसे ये आपकी जिंदगी की फिल्म का मुख्य प्लॉट हो। जैसे कोई फिल्म एक्शन पर फोकस करती है या कोई रोमांस पर, वैसे ही दशा तय करती है कि आपकी जिंदगी का एक खास दौर, जो कई सालों का हो सकता है, करियर पर, रिश्तों पर या समृद्धि पर फोकस करेगा। ये एक मास्टर कंट्रोलर की तरह है जो थीम सेट करता है। दूसरी परत है गोचर, यानी ग्रहों का मौजूदा ट्रांजिट। देखिए, अगर दशा एक बीज है तो गोचर वो पानी और धूप है जिससे वो बीज अंकुरित होता है। दशा किसी घटना का वादा करती है, लेकिन सही समय पर ग्रहों का गोचर उस वादे को हकीकत में बदलने वाले ट्रिगर का काम करता है।
तीसरी परत है भाव, यानी आपकी कुंडली के घर। इन्हें जिंदगी के अलग अलग मंच समझिए। एक करियर के लिए, एक शादी के लिए, एक सेहत के लिए। जब अच्छा समय आता है तो यह सिर्फ कुछ मंचों पर रोशनी डालता है, सभी पर नहीं। इसलिए हो सकता है कि करियर तो आसमान छू रहा हो, लेकिन सेहत पर ध्यान देने की जरूरत हो।
और चौथी परत है ग्रह का अपना स्वभाव। हर ग्रह का ना अपना एक फ्लेवर होता है। बृहस्पति विस्तार और सौभाग्य लाता है, तो शनि मेहनत और स्थिरता। इससे ये तय होता है कि जो घटना घट रही है उसका अनुभव कैसा होगा। क्या वो जिंदगी को बदलने वाला होगा? अब सारी चीजें एक साथ आती हैं। इस स्लाइड को जरा गौर से देखिए। जब मुख्य थीम यानी दशा अनुकूल हो, बृहस्पति जैसा शुभ ग्रह अवसर और विकास का आशीर्वाद दे रहा हो, और शनि जैसा ग्रह उसे धरातल पर उतारने के लिए स्थिरता दे रहा हो, तब एक जादुई खिड़की खुलती है। इसे डेस्टिनी एक्टिवेशन विंडो कहते हैं। ये 2-3 साल की अवधि वो समय होती है जब जिंदगी की सबसे बड़ी घटनाएं आकार लेती हैं। और जानते हैं, ज्योतिष के प्राचीन ग्रंथ भी इसी बात की पुष्टि करते हैं। ये विचार इस बात पर जोर देता है कि हमारे कर्मों के फल एक एक करके नहीं, बल्कि गुच्छों में पकते हैं। ठीक वैसे ही जैसे एक पेड़ पर सही मौसम आने पर सारे फल एक साथ पक जाते हैं। तो अब हमें ये तो पता चल गया कि घटनाएं एक साथ क्यों होती हैं। लेकिन कभी सोचा है कि जीवन में 28, 30 या 48, 50 जैसी उम्र इतनी महत्वपूर्ण और जिंदगी बदलने वाली क्यों होती है? चलिए, जीवन की इस ग्रहों वाली समय रेखा में और गहराई से उतरते हैं। स्क्रीन पर इस नंबर को देखिए, 29.5। ये वो साल है जो कर्म और अनुशासन के ग्रह शनि को राशि चक्र का एक पूरा चक्कर लगाने में लगते हैं, और यही संख्या हमारे जीवन के सबसे बड़े मोड़ को परिभाषित करती है। 28 से 32 साल की उम्र के बीच हर किसी के जीवन में पहला शनि रिटर्न आता है। ये ना ब्रह्मांड की तरफ से एक रियलिटी चेक जैसा है। ये वो समय है जब बचपन के सपने खत्म होते हैं और वास्तविकता की नींव रखी जाती है। करियर, रिश्ते और जिम्मेदारियों को लेकर गंभीर फैसले लेने का समय। और ये स्लाइड इस बदलाव को कितनी खूबसूरती से दिखाती है। 30 से पहले का जीवन बीज बोने जैसा है, सीखना, प्रयोग करना, तैयारी करना। लेकिन 36 के बाद ये उस बीज को एक विशाल पेड़ में बदलने का समय है, यानी उस नींव पर निर्माण करना और अपने कर्मों का फल पाना। और बात सिर्फ शनि की ही नहीं है। जैसे हम इंसान मैच्योर होते हैं, वैसे ही हर ग्रह की अपनी एक परिपक्वता आयु होती है। 28 से 36 की उम्र के बीच मंगल यानी हमारी ऊर्जा, बृहस्पति यानी हमारा ज्ञान, और शनि यानी हमारा अनुशासन, ये सभी बड़े खिलाड़ी पूरी तरह से मैच्योर हो जाते हैं। यही कारण है कि ये दशक अक्सर जीवन को परिभाषित करने वाला होता है। चलिए, अब जीवन के अगले बड़े मोड़ पर चलते हैं।
48 से 52 की उम्र। ये वो दौर है जब ध्यान व्यक्तिगत उपलब्धियों से हटकर एक गहरे उद्देश्य और विरासत बनाने पर केंद्रित हो जाता है। इस उम्र में होता क्या है कि ज्ञान के ग्रह बृहस्पति, कर्म के ग्रह शनि और जीवन के उद्देश्य से जुड़े राहु केतु के चक्र एक साथ आ जाते हैं, जो हमें आत्मनिरीक्षण के लिए प्रेरित करते हैं। फोकस मैंने क्या हासिल किया से बदलकर मैं दुनिया के लिए क्या छोड़कर जा रहा हूं पर चला जाता है। ये उपलब्धि से उद्देश्य की ओर एक सुंदर बदलाव है। ये स्लाइड जीवन की पूरी यात्रा को एक ब्रह्मांडीय नक्शे के रूप में प्रस्तुत करती है। देखिए कि कैसे हम बचपन में चंद्रमा यानी भावनाओं के प्रभाव से शुरू करते हैं, फिर बुध यानी सीखने के चरण से गुजरते हैं। 28-32 में शनि हमें नींव बनाने के लिए मजबूर करता है। 48-52 में बृहस्पति हमें ज्ञान और नेतृत्व की ओर ले जाता है, और फिर 58-60 की उम्र में दूसरा शनि रिटर्न हमें अपनी विरासत को अंतिम रूप देने के लिए कहता है। यह सचमुच सितारों में लिखी एक कहानी है। और अंत में ये टेबल पूरी यात्रा को 3 आसान से चरणों में समेट देती है। पहले 24 साल नींव और शिक्षा के हैं, फिर अगले लगभग 20 साल स्वतंत्रता और संरचना बनाने के हैं, और 42 के बाद का जीवन नेतृत्व, उद्देश्य और दुनिया पर अपनी छाप छोड़ने के बारे में है। तो यहाँ एक आखिरी विचार है, क्या जीवन एक फिनिश लाइन की तरफ दौड़ है, या ये ब्रह्मांडीय मौसमों से गुजरने वाली एक यात्रा है जहां हर मौसम का अपना एक समय, अपना एक उद्देश्य और अपनी एक खूबसूरती होती है? इस पर सोचिएगा जरूर।
Have you ever noticed how you can have a year where your career just absolutely skyrockets? Like you're getting promotions, upper management is singing your praises, but simultaneously your personal life is just completely falling apart.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's incredibly common.
Right. Or conversely, you look at a friend, or maybe you've experienced this yourself, where there's this massive, condensed 2-year window where you suddenly get the big promotion, you meet someone, you get married, and you buy a house. Like all at once.
Yeah, the classic, the clustering effect, where every single traffic light just turns green at exactly the right moment.
Exactly. It feels like the universe either decided to hand you everything on a silver platter or, just completely mixed up your delivery.
Yeah.
Well, according to the ancient framework of Vedic astrology, that clustering isn't random chaos.
No, not at all. It's actually, well, it's a highly structured architectural blueprint of timing.
Right. And today, we're going to figure out exactly how it works by pulling apart the mechanics detailed in our research on the Vedic cycles of human destiny. We're doing a full deep dive into excerpts from the Cosmic Clock, Vedic Cycles of Human Destiny.
Which is such a fascinating text.
It really is. And to be clear, right off the bat, this is not about, flipping to the back of a magazine to read your daily horoscope.
Yeah.
This is about understanding the complex intersecting cycles of human life to figure out why major life events cluster the way they do.
Yeah, and I think that provides an incredibly helpful lens for anyone who wants to understand the overarching patterns of their own life. What this framework offers is a way to remove that nagging feeling that life's chaos is completely random.
Or that you're somehow doing something wrong when things get difficult.
Yeah, exactly. It posits that there is a defined mathematical architecture to the timing of our lives. You aren't just flailing in the wind.
I love that. But to understand these sweeping life phases, we first have to bust a major astrological myth. And it's the idea of a universally good year. Like we constantly hear people say, oh, 2026 is going to be my year.
Right. The assumption being that if a year is going to be good for you, it's just going to be good for absolutely everything. Career, health, romance, all of it.
Exactly. And classical Vedic astrology fundamentally rejects that idea, doesn't it?
It completely rejects it. The statement that a single year can be universally good for a person completely misses how destiny actually operates in this system. According to this framework, destiny operates simultaneously across 4 distinct layers.
4 layers, okay.
Yeah. It is not a single dial that turns from bad to good. Think of it much more like a massive audio mixing board in a recording studio where, dozens of different tracks are sliding up and down independently.
That's a great way to picture it. Let's break down those 4 layers on the mixing board, because this is where the mechanics get really fascinating. Layer 1 is called the Dasha, or the planetary period. In the notes, this is called the master controller. But I also saw the term Mahadasha. What's the distinction there for someone who has, no background in this?
Sure. So Maha simply means great or major. So a Mahadasha is your major overarching planetary period. This layer decides the main theme of your life for a massive chunk of time.
How massive are we talking?
Oh, it can be decades. Let's say, according to your specific birth chart, you enter a Jupiter Mahadasha, and Jupiter is a strong, positive planet for you. That sets an overarching theme that could last for 16 years.
16 years?
Yeah. And Jupiter represents growth, wisdom, and expansion. So the promise of that entire era of your life might include career growth, marriage, or financial prosperity. That is your backdrop.
Okay, but a backdrop alone doesn't actually make an event happen. I mean, you can have the backdrop of a kitchen, but somebody still has to actually cook the meal, which brings in the second layer, right?
Yeah.
The transit or
Right.
Gochar.
Precisely. That is the trigger. If the Dasha is the broad era you are living in, the transit is the specific planetary movement happening right now in the real sky.
Like where the planets physically are today.
Exactly. When that planet, let's stick with Jupiter, physically transits through favorable positions in the sky relative to your birth chart, that is when it triggers the specific opportunity.
Oh, okay.
That is the moment the job offer actually arrives in your inbox, or the moment you happen to meet your future spouse at a coffee shop.
There is an ancient classical sutra, which is essentially a condensed aphorism or rule in these texts, that summarizes this dynamic perfectly. It says, Dasha indicates the promise. Transit triggers the event.
Yes. It's such an elegant way to phrase it.
Let's ground this in a metaphor for the listener. If the Dasha is your overarching, decade-long financial budget, the transit is the specific day you actually get in the car and drive to the store to spend the money.
That captures the relationship between the first two layers perfectly. You have the funds allocated and you have made the trip. But we still need the third layer to understand why everything doesn't go perfectly all at once.
Right, because otherwise every trip to the store would be a massive success.
Exactly. The third layer is house strength. In astrology, the sky is divided into 12 houses, and different houses govern completely different areas of human life.
Okay, so the 10th house is career, the 7th house is marriage, the 2nd and 11th are wealth, the 6th is health, and the 4th is property. Did I get those right?
I nailed it. Going back to your metaphor. The houses dictate which stores at the mall are actually open for business that day.
Oh, I like that.
You might have the budget, which is your Dasha. You might make the trip to the mall, which is the transit. You head straight to the 10th house to buy a fantastic, expensive new suit for your career, and that transaction goes flawlessly.
Because the 10th house store is open and fully stocked.
Right. But because the 6th house governs health, and it happens to be under a completely different, highly stressful planetary influence at that exact same moment, its store is closed. Or worse, the sidewalk outside is crumbling.
So you buy the immaculate suit for your career, walk out of the store, trip on the crumbling curb of the 6th house, and break your ankle.
Yeah, you look great in the suit, but you are on crutches for 6 weeks. That perfectly captures why a good year isn't good for everything.
It makes so much sense.
And that brings in the final variable, the fourth layer, which is the nature of the planet itself. Because every planet brings a different flavor of energy. Jupiter brings growth and wisdom. Venus is about love, diplomacy, and luxury.
And Mercury is intellect, right?
Yes, Mercury brings intellect and business acumen. Saturn is hard work, restriction, and stability. Mars is pure energy, aggression, and conflict.
Think about how much psychological relief this framework actually provides. How often do you feel like you're failing because one area of your life is a disaster, even when you are objectively succeeding in another?
Oh, all the time. People are so hard on themselves.
Right. Like if you are in a Venus period, it might be an incredible time for romance and exploring your creativity, but it might be an absolutely terrible time to try and win a grueling, aggressive corporate lawsuit, because that would require the combative energy of Mars.
Knowing this prevents you from internalizing that struggle as a personal failure. It is simply different planetary gears spinning simultaneously at totally different speeds, governing different areas of your life.
So you aren't failing at the lawsuit because you're inadequate.
No, you just don't have the planetary momentum for a street fight at that particular moment.
Okay, so once we establish that there are all these different layers, you've got the Dasha budget, the transit trigger, the house venues, and the planet personalities. The logical next question is, what happens when all those wildly different gears actually lock into place and spin in the exact same direction?
Yeah. That is when you enter what Vedic astrologers call a destiny activation window. And this explains that universally observed phenomenon we talked about at the very beginning, why major life events tend to cluster so tightly within a 2 to 3 year window.
The famous 2 years where you get the job, buy the house, and have the kid all back to back.
Exactly. The mechanics of this are laid out beautifully in the framework. This massive clustering happens when 3 specific timing systems align at once.
Okay, lay them on me.
Number 1, you have a favorable Dasha activating multiple houses. Number 2, you have Jupiter's transit. Jupiter takes roughly 12 years to cycle the entire zodiac, staying about 1 year in each sign, expanding opportunities wherever it touches.
And number 3.
Number 3, you have Saturn's stabilization. Saturn takes about 29.5 years to make its cycle, and it brings heavy structure and long-term commitments. You need all 3 for a major life overhaul.
So Jupiter brings the luck, but Saturn brings the glue.
That's a perfect way to say it. You need the overarching theme of the Dasha. You need Jupiter's expansive, optimistic energy bringing the literal opportunity to your doorstep. But crucially, you need Saturn's heavy structural energy to actually lock it in.
Because an opportunity without Saturn is just a fleeting moment. It's like a great date that doesn't lead to a second one.
Exactly. When Saturn gets involved, that fleeting opportunity becomes a 30-year mortgage or a lifelong marriage. When the Dasha, Jupiter, and Saturn all align, it creates a massive structural window where your entire life changes shape.
I mean, that sounds amazing, but I have to play devil's advocate for a second here.
Go for it.
It is really easy to look back in hindsight and say, oh, well, the planets aligned for me in 2018, but isn't this just the natural momentum of life?
Yeah.
Like, if I finally land a high-paying job, obviously I suddenly have the money to buy a house, which naturally makes me feel financially secure enough to finally propose to my partner. Isn't that just basic cause and effect? Why do we need to credit Jupiter and Saturn?
It's a completely fair pushback. The Vedic framework addresses this through the concept of karmic ripening or karma phala. Ancient texts describe this process as karma ripening in clusters.
Ripening in clusters. What does that look like?
Think of it like a phase of final exams at a university. You don't take one final exam in October, one in February, and one in May. You take them all in one intense 2-week window in December because the underlying structure of the academic term mandates the cluster.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
The events are related, yes, but they are all ripening simultaneously because the specific season has arrived.
The seasonal analogy from the source text is incredibly helpful here to bridge the gap between human cause and effect and astrological timing. Like, think of your life like the Earth's seasons. When spring arrives, blooming happens across the board.
Right. Everything wakes up at once.
The grass grows, the flowers open, the trees bud all at the exact same time. Your astrological spring creates an environment where all these distinct seeds you've planted can sprout simultaneously. You still had to plant the seeds. You still had to go to the job interviews, save your money, and put in the work dating your partner.
You do the work, but the astrological weather is what allowed all those efforts to bloom in the same month.
Exactly.
And recognizing whether you are currently in a spring phase of growth, an autumn phase of harvesting, or a winter phase of rest and challenge dramatically changes how you should exert your energy.
Because if you don't know the season, you're going to get frustrated.
Very frustrated. If you are in an astrological winter, banging your head against the wall trying to force a major career expansion is going to lead to severe burnout. It's a time for internal work. The environment simply will not support the external growth you are trying to force.
And those seasons aren't just randomly distributed throughout our lives either. Astrologers have tracked this for centuries, and they've identified specific universal ages where these planetary alignments force massive life overhauls for almost everyone. The text calls these the crucible years.
Yeah, the crucible years. There are 2 major crucible windows. The first is ages 28 to 32, and the second is ages 35 to 42. These are consistently the most transformative and honestly often the most turbulent periods in a human's life.
Let's start with that 28 to 32 window. Speaking from experience and watching almost everyone I know go through it, late 20s panic is a very visceral thing.
Oh, it really is. It's almost a cliche at this point.
Right. People suddenly quit their jobs, they break off long-term engagements, they move across the country to start over. What is going on there astrologically?
Right. It is driven primarily by what is called the first Saturn return. As we noted, Saturn takes about 29.5 years to orbit the sun. So right around your late 20s, Saturn returns to the exact mathematical position it was in the sky when you were born.
And why does a 29.5-year orbit matter psychologically?
Because it takes roughly 30 years for a human being to exhaust their youthful trial and error phase. Saturn is the planet of reality and consequence. It effectively shows up and demands you build the real permanent foundation of your life. It strips away youthful potential and forces actual maturity and long-term commitments.
And it isn't just Saturn doing the heavy lifting here. That is what makes this window so intense. Right as Saturn is demanding stability, this period overlaps with the lunar nodal return, the Rahu-Ketu cycle, around age 27 or 28.
Yes, the nodes add a massive layer of complexity.
Let me pause here because I saw nodes in the research. For those of us who aren't astronomers, what actually is a node? Are these like physical planets hiding out there in the solar system?
They are not physical bodies, no. The nodes, known as Rahu and Ketu in Vedic astrology, are mathematically calculated points in space where the moon's orbit crosses the sun's apparent path.
Oh, so they're intersections.
Exactly. These are the exact points that cause solar and lunar eclipses. And in this framework, eclipses represent sudden, dramatic shadows and reveals. They represent your karmic direction.
So what happens when they return at 27 or 28?
Well, while Saturn is demanding you lay down concrete and build a foundation, the nodes are driving sudden karmic shifts. They make you question your entire identity, triggering a spiritual crisis or a sudden urge to relocate entirely.
Wow. And on top of that, Mars, the planet of pure independence and courage, reaches its full astrological maturity around age 28.
Yeah.
No wonder everyone feels like they are losing their minds at 29.
It's a perfect storm.
You are being pulled toward aggressive independence by Mars. Your entire identity is being eclipsed and redirected by the nodes, and Saturn is just standing there with a clipboard demanding you sign a 30-year contract.
All within a 3-year span. It is a crucible in the truest sense of the word. But then, once you survive that and establish your foundation, you hit the 35 to 42 window.
What changes there?
This is when Saturn reaches its full maturity around age 36. The struggle of the late 20s pays off here. This is where careers actually stabilize, where people step into real leadership roles, and where long-term wealth building begins.
But there's a catch, isn't there?
Always a catch. Simultaneously, the second nodal cycle hits around age 37, which pushes a new life purpose, often resulting in massive professional pivots just as you're getting comfortable.
The classical summary of this timeline from the text is just brilliant. It states, life before 30 prepares the foundation. Life after 36 begins the real karmic execution. It treats human life like the growth of a tree.
I love that analogy.
Yeah. Ages 0 to 28 is the seed stage. It is pure experimentation. You are just figuring out what kind of plant you even are. And then 28 to 36 is the root stage. You're building the hidden structure beneath the soil. It's dark, it's hard work, and nobody really sees the effort you are putting in.
Right, it's all underground.
And then 36 onward is the tree stage. That is the visible growth, the trunk expanding, the branches reaching out. So if someone listening is right in the middle of that 29-year-old Saturn return, feeling completely lost and behind their peers, how should they reframe that panic?
By understanding that the panic of the late 20s, or even the disruptions of the late 30s, is not a sign of failure. It is the necessary structured shedding of immature patterns. The planets are literally demanding that you restructure your identity to survive the next phase of life.
You're moving from the seed to the root.
Exactly. It is supposed to feel heavy and restrictive because you are pouring the concrete foundation that the rest of your adult life will stand on.
So the tree roots are set by age 36. The trunk grows. But a tree doesn't just grow upward forever. The biological imperative eventually shifts from pure growth to reproduction bearing fruit, providing shade for others. Does this astrological framework account for when we stop trying to ruthlessly build our careers and start trying to leave a legacy?
It does, in a really profound way. It introduces the concept of the destiny shift, which occurs roughly between the ages of 48 and 52.
Okay, the 48 to 52 window.
Yes. And modern pop culture usually dismisses this period by labeling it a midlife crisis.
Yeah.
You know, the stereotype of someone buying a sports car or quitting their corporate executive job to open a bakery.
We've all seen it happen.
But Vedic astrology views this not as a crisis of youth, but as a profound karmic integration.
Let's slow down and look at the planetary math for this 48 to 52 window, because there is a massive amount of planetary traffic hitting all at once. First, you're approaching your second Saturn cycle. The full return hits around 58, but you feel the approach heavily by 48.
Yeah, by age 50, Saturn has completed about 1.6 orbits of your chart since birth. All the karma, all the actions and habits, good or bad, that you locked in during your first Saturn return at 29 are now fully mature.
It's review time.
Big time. You are forced to look at the undeniable results of the foundation you built. Naturally, your focus shifts toward your limitations and what kind of permanent legacy you are leaving behind.
And right as you are assessing that legacy, you enter the pre-activation window of your third nodal cycle, the eclipse's return.
Rahu and Ketu step back in to direct traffic. Their influence here causes a deep, almost undeniable desire to change your life direction. It brings profound detachment from your earlier ego-driven ambitions.
So the corner office, or the fancy title that motivated you so fiercely at 35, suddenly feels completely hollow at 50.
Exactly. You begin craving spiritual or philosophical meaning over material accumulation.
Finally, the cherry on top. The fourth Jupiter return happens exactly at age 48. Jupiter takes 12 years to orbit, so 4 laps equals 48. By the fourth lap, Jupiter's energy evolves.
Right. It isn't just about personal growth anymore. At 48, it symbolizes wisdom, maturity, mentoring, and philosophical expansion.
So you put all that together. Saturn wants legacy, the nodes want detachment from ego, and Jupiter wants to mentor the next generation.
The result is a fundamental shift from an ambition-driven life to a wisdom-driven life. This is why we see career trajectories pivot from direct management into consulting or teaching. Wealth generation shifts into wealth consolidation and philanthropy. Your very identity shifts from what you can achieve to what your ultimate purpose is.
The classical insight here is striking. It says, the first half of life builds karma. The second half begins understanding it.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
It really is. And the timeline of human development mapped out from age 0 to 80 in the source text is literally like passing a baton in a cosmic relay race.
Yes. Walk through that. It's a great summary.
Okay, look at how the planetary dominance shifts. From ages 0 to 12, the moon dominates, which is entirely about emotional foundation, mother, and bonding. Then from 12 to 24, Mercury and Jupiter take the baton, that's formal education, intellect, and developing belief systems. Then Mars grabs the baton from 24 to 30, demanding independence, ambition, and the courage to break away from the parents. Saturn takes over from 30 to 42 for brutal structure, career building, and reality checks. And then Jupiter gets the baton back from 42 to 52 for expansion, teaching, and leadership.
It is a beautifully synchronized system. Every single phase has a distinct developmental purpose, and every planet rules a different, necessary chapter of the human experience. If you are approaching or in your 50s, and you are feeling a sudden, unexplained loss of drive for the career you've spent decades building, it's not burnout.
But you aren't broken.
You aren't broken. It's your nodal and Jupiter cycles pushing you exactly where you were supposed to go toward teaching, purpose, and spiritual integration.
We have covered an immense amount of ground today. What we've explored is that life is not a linear uphill climb where everything is supposed to be universally good all at once. It is a complex ecosystem of intersecting cycles. You have the dashas acting as the overarching budget, the transits pulling the trigger on specific events, the houses determining which stores are actually open to receive those events, and specific planetary returns that completely rebuild our foundations at exact predictable ages like 29, 36, and 48.
It raises a really profound question about how we view our own progress, actually. There's a concept in this framework called planetary maturity ages.
Oh, right. Tell them about this.
It explicitly states that every planet reaches its absolute full strength at a totally different time in your life. Mars matures at 28 to give you courage. Saturn does not mature until 36 to give you stability. Jupiter doesn't fully expand your wisdom until after 30, and then hits its ultimate mentoring phase at 48.
Think about the implications of that for a second.
If every vital component of your psyche and your life structure matures at a completely different decade in your life, then the very concept of being behind in life is mathematically impossible within this framework.
That is wild. You cannot be behind.
You cannot be behind. Are you judging yourself right now for not having the rock-solid concrete stability of a Saturn phase while you are still fundamentally living in the educational Mercury phase or the highly experimental volatile Mars phase of your life?
That is such a powerful reframe. It goes right back to the scenario we opened with.
Yeah.
You cannot expect your personal life to be perfectly stable and peaceful if you are in a planetary phase designed purely for aggressive career disruption.
No, you can't.
You cannot expect to harvest the fruit when it is astrologically your season to be in the dirt planting seeds. Take a look at your own timeline. Figure out what season you are currently navigating, recognize which planets might be pulling the levers behind the curtain, and stop trying to harvest crops in the middle of spring. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next Deep Dive.